So roughly 2,400 bucks a month in ADAS calibration margin is sitting on the floor of the average mid-sized body shop today. And most owners I talk to are deciding what to do about it without seeing the math. Today I'm going to show you on the whiteboard what the math actually looks like. So before you decide whether to bring ADAS in-house, you need to know which stage you're living in at present. So you might be asking, what stage am I talking about? REVV actually came out with a mapped 5-stage maturity curve or capability curve that they put out pretty recently. So I'm going to show you on the board these different stages. So stage 1 is fully sublet. So you have no in-house process, you write the ticket, the vendor handles it. You call them and they come take care of it. Stage 2 is simple calibrations in-house, basic tools, again, simple systems only, maybe forward-facing cameras, maybe basic statics, maybe some dynamics depending. The vendor probably still handles the complex multi-system work, right? Stage 3 is most calibrations are in-house with real systems. So you typically will see capturing 50 to 80% of the work inside the building. Stage 4 is when you have dedicated bays, a dedicated tech, and you'll see 90% plus in-house, capturing 80 to 95% of the work. And then stage 5 here is you're likely a sublet provider yourself, serving the other shops in your market. Now, this is what was interesting from the survey that they did. They found that 42% of the shops were either in stage 1 or stage 2. Now, 20% were at stage 3, and then 38% are in stage 4 or 5. So roughly 2/3 of the shops are sitting in stages 1 through 3. Now, I've found that most ADAS equipment pitches sell shop owners probably the stage 4 jump, and they skip stages 2 and 3 entirely. And the math at those stages looks nothing like the math at stage 4. And so the financial conclusion that you get to depends on where the shop actually is on that maturity curve. And so I'm going to put the math on the board at 2 of those stages, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, so here's my shop, all right? Let's say I've got 3 million in sales revenue, average severity 4,500 bucks. That would be about 56 closed ROs per month. Now Tuesday I talked about how about 37 cars per 100 are walking out under-calibrated. So for a 56 RO a month shop, that's actually about 20 cars every month that are walking out uncalibrated. So the way it breaks down is 36 of those 56 monthly ROs need ADAS recalibration. So if you look at the way REVV is talking about it, they're saying 65% of 56, 36 ROs are needing recalibration. Then you're down here, about 16 are actually getting it. So that's CCC's 28.3% penetration that we talked about, which means the other 20 are walking out uncalibrated. So before we talk about buying any equipment or anything like that, those are the first numbers that you need to know. Okay, so now the next piece of the puzzle is per job revenue. So the average ADAS affected job needs about 1.8 calibrations. So the first calibration is typically at full rate is what I'm seeing out there, and then half rate on each one thereafter. So REVV published an industry midpoint, and they're saying that's 350 bucks for the first calibration and about 175 for each subsequent one. Now, if you're at 1.8 calibrations per RO, then you're going to take 1 times 350 plus the 0.8 times 175. That gives you about $490 per ADAS affected job. So that was Wednesday's video, has the full walkthrough that you can walk through. But for this shop, we just talked about how they have 20 missed jobs per month, 20 missed ROs, okay, times 490 bucks. That's $9,800 in calibration billing that the shop isn't capturing. Under typical vendor arrangements, let's say the shop keeps about 25% of that as contribution under sublet or margin under sublet. So roughly 25% of your 9,800 is about $2,440 a month in margin that's sitting on your floor just by missing the work before any sort of in-house move. Okay, now we're moving on to stage 2, and we're going to walk through the math on that. So stage 2 means you're doing some of the simple calibrations in-house. Let's say forward-facing cameras, some basic static calibrations, and let's say with downtime being what it is right now, existing techs are in some slack time. You've got some excess, okay? Let's say you bought excess targets once and the vendor still handles the complex multi-system work. So here's the math. The shop's already earning 25% of your sublet today, okay? So that's this math here. So you got $490, $122 per job that you're getting right now. Now, when you take that calibration in-house, the vendor cost goes away, right? Per job revenue stays at $490. Now you need some labor though, right? So per job labor, let's call it about 3 hours of tech time. Let's load it at about $55 an hour. That's $165. So your net contribution at stage 2 is $490 minus your $165 is $325 per job. Now, your incremental cash then over the sublet option is about $203 per job because you got $325 minus the $122. So the stage 2 fixed cost though comes into play here because you're going to need to bring some of this stuff in-house. I'm calling it about $1,250 a month for, let's say, software and OEM access. So in order to figure out how many jobs you need to break even, you need to take that $1,250, sorry for the glare here, $1,250 per month in OEM and software divided by 203 from up here, and you get about 6 jobs. So stage 2 breaks even at about 6 ADAS affected jobs a month. That's less than 1 in 5 of the 36 jobs available in this scenario. And here's the thing, if you can get a tech doing the calibration that's on downtime anyway, maybe has some excess capacity, you can actually treat part of this labor as already sunk cost, which means you're not paying any extra for that technician to be doing the work that they're doing. Now the break even drops closer to maybe 3 jobs a month or less. Now look, almost any shop with any ADAS volume will clear that screen. The operating math is not the problem at stage 2, that's the point. Okay, now we need to move on to stage 3 to 4. This is the transition that most ADAS pitches sell directly, right? The equipment guys. Dedicated bay, dedicated tech, 90% plus is being done in-house, including the complex multi-system work. You've got OEM-backed documentation. But the structural change at stage 3 to 4 is going to be the technician. So stage 2, we just talked about, used existing techs that were hopefully you had a little capacity, they were in slack time. So labor was variable per job or maybe even just free labor because you're taking advantage of some opportunity that you've got. So stage 3 to 4 means a dedicated ADAS tech that's on payroll. And once that tech is on, their time is largely fixed depending on how you structure their compensation. So per job revenue is going to stay at $490. There really are no direct costs consumably, right? Which basically is nothing. So your contribution per job is the full $490 because there's really not a lot of variable cost. But that contribution of $490 has to beat what you're already earning in subletting. So if you remember our original math, we said $490 times the 25% gets you about $122 per job. So the sublet baseline is $122 per job. So your incremental contribution from going into stage 3 or 4 is $490 minus the 122 that you had from earlier, which gets you to about 368 per job. Now, you may have to rewind this to get your head around it and follow me all the way to the end. I think you'll get it. But there's fixed costs. So the fixed cost is your software. Rev says maybe $1,500 a month. I had $1,250 in stage 3, somewhere in that range. Plus, now you've got a dedicated ADAS tech. Let's call it, it's probably 8 to 10K a month, fully loaded. Some of you are going to argue with me about that. We'll call it 8K for this example. So total fixed cost is $9,500. And that's before you bought equipment. So you got $9,500 divided by your 368. That means you need about 26 jobs per month to justify going from sublet to a full ADAS tech stage 3, 4-ish range, right? So you need about 26 jobs to beat sublet. And that's before the equipment financing comes into the picture. So for this shop, if you remember, 26 jobs is probably about 72% of the 36 that were available, assuming Rev's 65% of the 56 original jobs. That's the top end of stage 3's published capture range, which is approaching stage 4. So the stage 3 to 4 math really requires near stage 4 capture levels just for the operating math to beat the sublet. So here's the punchline. Stage 2 operating math is actually pretty easy. 6 jobs a month beats sublet most of the time. Almost any shop with even just a little bit of ADAS volume will clear that hurdle. Stage 3 to 4 operating math is a little bit harder, right? The shop has to be running near that stage 4 capture level, around 72%, just for the operating math to beat the sublet math. And that's before equipment financing. So the biggest lever for most is still capture rate, which is why I started there at the beginning. You got to fix that before deciding to build anything else. And we haven't priced 2 more things here: equipment economics, as I've mentioned, and the cycle time credit, which is the days that you get back when calibration stops being a bottleneck. Now, you may have a great partner that solves that for you. That's awesome. That's not the case for everybody. But those are the next layers that we'll talk about next week. Now, operating math at stage 3 to 4 is hard, but it's computable, right? The capital decision at stage 3 to 4 is where the build call actually gets made or unmade. And with severity where it is and frequency falling in 2026, that capital question is harder than the operating math suggests. So if you want the full ADAS economics playbook at the end of May, subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter. Sign up link is on my profile.